Hello, everybody. Welcome back to We're Talking Movies. As always, I'm Andrew, joined by Cade. And once again, we are here for our annual awards ceremony, this time covering the year 2025. As always, we have our four categories. The first and foremost, we each have our top three favorite movies of the year. We have the Make You Feel Like a Kid Again award, as always, which is our most fun we had at the cinema. We have the Phantom Menace award, which, if you don't remember, is our most disappointing movie of the year. And then finally, we have the Cats 2019 award for worst movie of 2025. Now, when we do this, we begin with the positive stuff. We begin with our top three favorite movies. Now, Cade, I want to kick us off. What was your third most favorite movie of 2025?
Sure. So to kick this off, coming in at number three for me is going to be Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and I had high hopes for it because of who I knew was in the director's chair. And admittedly, as someone who's very tired of remakes and, reimaginings and whatnot, I'm happy to say that this movie did deliver. I really like Guillermo del Toro as a director. I think he has made a lot of great monster movies throughout his career, and he said before that he actually identifies with these types of characters, and we typically see him portray these characters as outsiders, and I think that that style works really well with the story of Frankenstein. And from a directing standpoint, I think he did a very good job. I also really love the cast of this movie. Oscar Isaac did a really good job as Victor Frankenstein. Jacob Elordi I thought was really great as the monster, but then you also have people like Mia Goth. You also have the great Christoph Waltz. The cast in general I think is just great, and apart from how it recreates the story of Frankenstein, the movie is also a great accomplishment from a filmmaking perspective, just in my opinion, and I come to expect that with movies made by Guillermo del Toro. It's shot and edited incredibly well, and I really like the sound design, and the costumes are really great too. And do I think it's Guillermo del Toro's best movie overall? No, not really, but I do consider it a good entry in his filmography. And with that, yeah, it's gonna make my number three favorite movie of the year.
Excellent choice. Definitely a very good movie. Didn't quite crack my top three, but was definitely a very good movie in its own right. Now, moving over to me, before we get into my third favorite movie of 2025, I just have to highlight 2025 was truly a great year in the horror genre. And as you will see over the course of our discussion of our favorites, we were quite a big fan of it as well. But you had stuff like Final Destination Bloodlines, you had Together, and then you had my third favorite movie of 2025, which was Weapons. Holy cow, what a great, completely original horror movie that completely came out of left field and surprised everybody with just how damn good it was. I love movies that utilize non-conventional storytelling, and this movie uses it really well, sort of focusing on how different characters are affected by the same key event, but without doing it in sequential order. The acting is incredibly strong across the board, especially by the now Oscar nominated for her role, Amy Madigan, as Aunt Gladys, which is going to, in my opinion, go down as a classic horror movie villain, amplified not only by Madigan's incredibly creepy, disturbing performance, but also the incredibly over-the-top, gaudy makeup and costume they gave for her, which really ups the creepiness of her character. But one another thing I need to highlight about why I love this movie so much is the sound design. This movie knows when to be loud, but it also knows when to be dead quiet. And the dead quiet moments really amplify the creepy, eerie feel of this movie.
I completely agree. And with that, coming in at number two on my list is going to be Weapons. And this is a movie, like you said, Andrew, that really surprised me. And admittedly, I wasn't too sold on this movie by the trailers. I mean, it seemed interesting, but I wasn't too sure if it was going to be anything special. And I'm thrilled by how wrong I was. This is probably one of my favorite horror films in recent years. And if you've been following our channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a big fan of mystery stories. So I really loved that approach that this movie took. I loved all the different perspectives that we got from the characters. I thought the cast in general did a really great job. Julia Garner is great. Josh Brolin is great. Like you were saying, Amy Madigan was probably the standout performance as Aunt Gladys. And one of my favorite things about the movie, I genuinely found it disturbing and unsettling. The mystery surrounding all these missing kids was disturbing. Aunt Gladys is a really good horror villain. And something that I really appreciated is how the movie doesn't rely constantly on jump scares throughout the entire runtime. That is always one of my biggest pet peeves with horror films, and this movie chose not to take that direction. So to me, it felt more innovative because of that.
Yeah, and something I actually meant to include in my section, but I want to add is I really like that this is a horror movie that focuses on witchcraft as opposed to a demon or a monster or a ghost. You don't see a ton of witchcraft-based horror movies nowadays.
And talking about that side of the story, the witchcraft side, and also how it ties in with the mystery of the film, what I really like is the fact that when the movie starts out, it seems like it's going to be sort of a whodunit type of story. Who's responsible for doing this? But we find out about halfway through the film that it's Aunt Gladys behind everything. And the mystery isn't really more of a whodunit story. What I like about it is that it's way more of a whydunit, because the question is, why did she take all these kids for most of the runtime? So I think that that was an interesting angle to take with the mystery.
Yeah, not an idea you see done terribly often is, oh, we're going to reveal, the big secret halfway through the movie, but then sort of deep dive into it. Again, I love non-traditional storytelling techniques.
Yeah, and I give a lot of credit to the writer and director of this movie, Zach Greger, and I'm definitely excited to see what he'll give us next.
Oh yeah, no, he is if he's able to maintain this kind of quality moving forward, I could see him going on a sort of a Robert Eggers kind of director rise.
But now that we finished talking about weapons, now it's time to get into your number two favorite film, Andrew.
Okay, my number two favorite movie of 2025 came in at quite literally the 11th hour because I was first introduced to this movie on December 27th, 2025. Because originally this spot belonged to Weapons, but this came in and stole the silver. This is a movie called Code 3. Now, when you look at the poster for this movie and you look at who stars in it, you think, oh, this is going to be a screwball comedy because, I mean, look at the poster. It's a very goofy poster with some big exaggerated faces, and it stars comedic actors Rainn Wilson and Lil Ray Howery. So you think, oh, this is going to be a paramedic comedy. No. Quite the opposite. This is a brutal and hyper-realistic portrayal of life as a paramedic. Something we don't see done accurately enough. Everybody who tries to do it, with very few exceptions, blows it way out of proportion for the sake of drama. This movie does not. This movie focuses on all of the little trials and tribulations that build up to make being a paramedic such an intense line of work. The annoying little grievances, the red tape of the medical industry, the visuals that will stay with you for the rest of your life, the tragedy, the triumph, and the acting across the board is brilliant, but Rainn Wilson in particular is phenomenal. He presents a man that has been doing this job for way too long, and how it's mentally broken him down, how it's physically broken him down. But then it also shows when he tries to leave, he can't. It ends with him saying, how can I fix a broken system if I'm not a part of it? This is a phenomenal movie. And I have, as somebody whose both parents are in the medical field and my father is a paramedic, to hear that man who has been a paramedic for almost 3 decades say that this is the most realistic portrayal of his profession is a major gold star for this movie. And yes, it does have its funny moments, but they're not overblown. So with that out of the way, we need to move into our gold medal positions. So Cade, what took the gold for you for 2025? What was your favorite movie of last year?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Andrew. I really debated this because I really, really enjoyed Weapons. But after a rewatch of both films, I settled on my number one, and that is going to be Sinners. This is the latest film by director Ryan Coogler, and having seen all his previous movies, Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, I can honestly say that I genuinely think that this is Ryan Coogler's best film to date.
Wow, that is saying something.
And it's definitely, I think, a film where he shines the most as a director. And just like with Weapons, I love how this is another original film because, again, as someone who's gotten very jaded with a lot of movies these days being remakes, reboots, sequels, prequels, so on and so forth, I loved seeing an original film, but not just an original film, just a really, really good original film. It just felt like such a breath of fresh air. And I absolutely love how it utilizes vampires in this movie. I've always enjoyed vampire stories, so I was really interested to see this film and see what type of spin Ryan Coogler would bring to it. And one of the best things about this movie is the fact that it just makes vampires scary. And I really think that's something that we don't really get a lot of in modern vampire films and shows these days.
No, we do not.
But apart from that, the film also just looks incredible. I really love the atmosphere of this movie. It's shot incredibly well. The production design is great. The music is also just incredible. But just like with Frankenstein and Weapons, you also have just a really, really great cast in this movie. You got a great dual performance by Michael B. Jordan, who plays the brothers Smoke and Stack. And what's cool about this is that it really shows how much range Michael B. Jordan has as an actor because he reminds us how great he is as both a protagonist and an antagonist when Stack eventually becomes a vampire, spoiler alert. But you also have Haley Steinfeld. I've always liked Haley Steinfeld, and I gotta tell you, I think that this might be her best performance to date. She's really captivating in this movie, and after seeing her play protagonists for so many years, it was really cool to see her take on this role as the sort of femme fatale vampire character. But I also really like Jack O'Connell as Remick, the villain of the film. His performance and the character both pay homage to, I think, the classic portrayal of vampires because he's both incredibly incredibly menacing in this movie, but he's also somewhat equally charismatic, if that makes sense. It's a very enthralling performance to watch. But yeah, again, I really struggled whether I was going to put this or Weapons, but after rewatching, I think Sinners is just a little bit better. Again, I think it's Ryan Coogler's best film to date, and yeah, it is definitely going to be my top one favorite movie of 2025.
Very good choice. I'm sure you're not the only one to think that. So now, moving back over to me, I need to give a bit of backstory. Long story short, 2025 was not the best year in my life for a variety of reasons. And I also didn't have a ton of free time this year because I decided I was going to go back and start my master's program. So I didn't get to see a lot of the movies that I wanted to see, Sinners being one of those. But one good thing that came out of 2025 was that I finally dipped my toe into the world of anime, having been told I would really like the genre for years. But there was one anime in particular that really got me into the genre, and that was Demon Slayer. So my pick for the best movie that I saw in 2025 is Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 1. Wow, is the best way I can describe this movie. The animation in this movie, in my opinion, pushes the boundaries of what the genre of animation can do. There is some times where the animation is so fast and so complicated that I think it's going to rip itself apart. So the animation is phenomenal, as is animation in Demon Slayer in general. But what really sold this movie for me was the emotion that this movie made me feel. I don't cry at movies easily, but the fact that I cried at this speaks volumes. Having to see Shinobu fall short of defeating her enemy in Doma was a gut punch. Getting to see Zenitsu, a character that I previously could not have cared less about because I found him incredibly annoying in the series. Not only step up to the plate and man up for once, but then get one of the most satisfying defeats of a villain I've seen in a long time when he takes on his adopted brother Kaigaku. And then the final bit of the movie, when Tanjiro and Giyu team up to take down Akaza. Tanjiro trying to get redemption against a villain that he failed to defeat earlier in the series, and the villain that killed one of his mentors in Kyojuro Rengoku. And the fact that they then, at the very end of the movie, decided that they're also going to make me feel bad for Akaza, a character that had previously been set up as this detestable villain, to dig into his backstory and make me actually feel bad for him is a feat unto itself. I loved this movie. And another small detail I love is that I love how it dovetails into setting up part two, which is coming out in 2027. The way that this movie ends with Giyu and Tanjiro teaming up to defeat Akaza. And then it teases that the next big bad of part two is going to be Upper Moon 1, Kokushibo. And how they sort of dovetail into that I find quite nice, where it's like Akaza is defeated and Kokushibo is like, I feel a disturbance. And the fact that my favorite character, Guillaume Himejima, is the one who faces Kokushibo in the manga makes me very excited for the next one, because as much as I love this movie, I didn't get to see a ton of my beloved Stone Hashira. But I'm so glad I got into anime this year. So now that our top three favorite movies of the year are completed, we move on to our second category, which is, as always, the Make You Feel Like a Kid Again award for the most fun you had at the cinema. This isn't necessarily the best movie you saw in 2025. This is the one you had the most fun seeing. So, Cade, what is your winner for the Make You Feel Like a Kid Again award?
Honestly, this was kind of a hard decision, but my choice for most fun at the theater is actually going to be Ballerina. And I've always been a really big fan of the John Wick franchise ever since I saw the first movie back in 2014. And personally, I never had any interest in seeing a spin-off from this franchise in any way. I've never seen the limited series, The Continental, but I was willing to give this movie a try because I heard good things about it, and I'm glad that I did. Now, of all the movies that we've gotten in this franchise so far, this one I think is definitely the weakest in my opinion. With that being said, overall, I had a pretty good time with this movie, especially when I saw it in theaters. Ana de Armas, I think, does a really good job as Eve, who's one of the assassins tied to the underworld that John is also a part of. And one of my favorite things about the movie is how it honors all the things that make the John Wick franchise what it is. The action is still exciting as hell. The fight choreography is so incredibly well done. It still looks beautiful, when it comes to the cinematography and the color palettes. The cast is also really good, apart from Ana de Armas, you got Norman Reedus, who I really like. You also have the returning cast members, Ian McShane and the late Lance Reddick. And of course, you also have Keanu Reeves back again as John Wick. And he doesn't have a big role in the movie. He shows up earlier in the film and then he comes back during the third act when he's ordered to hunt down Eve. And while this still remains Eve's movie, John still gets done well with the brief amount of time that he has, and Keanu still kills it. So that's something that I really appreciated. And the story itself does work pretty fine because as we see Eve hunting down the people who killed her father. I guess you could say that the plot is a little too familiar and predictable with the action genre, and I won't really argue with that, but I think it still works well with this franchise because it stays true to having revenge as one of the main themes. So yeah, overall, I had a lot of fun seeing this movie in the theater, and I think it is a very solid entry in the franchise, and if there is a sequel to it, like they've been talking about, I would definitely be interested in seeing it.
Now, for my winner for this category, as always, I have honorable mentions because even though I didn't get to go to the movies nearly as much as I usually do, I did still have a lot of fun at the cinema. So I need to give an honorable mention to Thunderbolts, Superman, Becoming Led Zeppelin, and the most recent addition to this list, Zootopia 2. But there was one movie that stood above them all for me, and that was How to Train Your Dragon. Now you see, Disney, this is how you do a live-action remake of a classic. No weird changes, no updating for a modern age, no feeling of general lazy slop. Just take the original and do it in live action. And this movie does that phenomenally, in my opinion. I gotta give, first and foremost, I gotta give a huge shout out to the special effects in this movie. All of the dragons in this movie look awesome, but Toothless stands above them all. They knew the assignment. They knew if they had to make one effect look really good, it had to be Toothless, and they did a really good job. He doesn't look overly computerized. They still got a great texture to his skin and wings. On top of that, Gerard Butler was still really good as Stoic. I love the fact that they brought him back to play Stoic in the live action. Mason Thames, I thought he was a pretty good Hiccup. Not a perfect Hiccup, but a pretty good one. Toothless's personality comes through just as well in the live action as it did in the animated original. The action is really good. The big Viking battle between the Vikings and the dragons was really good. Yeah, just a very fun movie from end to end, and I'm very glad that they're going to be doing How to Train Your Dragon 2. I'm very excited. It was a very good movie, and it came out at a good time. All right, now that all the positivity is out of the way, and we begin as always with what we have dubbed the Phantom Menace Award, which is our most disappointing movie of the year. Now, before we get into our actually shared most disappointing movie of the year, I have to say for me, this was a particularly difficult category because there was a lot of disappointing crap this year. Originally, this was going to be The Monkey for me because that was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and then it came out and it was just kind of there. But then The Perfect Answer came out in September of 2025. And Cade and I agree that it was our most disappointing movie of the year. Shall we say it together?
Absolutely.
The Conjuring Last Rites.
Yeah, here's the thing about this movie. And look, if you've been following our channel for a while, so I love the original, The Conjuring. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. The second Conjuring, I think, is a very good follow-up. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. There were parts of that movie that I did like, but overall, I thought it was more of a mediocre entry. And unfortunately, I do kind of feel the same way about this movie, Andrew.
Oh boy, where do we even begin? First and foremost, this isn't a terrible movie.
No, it's not a bad movie at all. And for what it's worth, I do think it is an improvement over the third film.
Yeah, I would definitely would rather go back and rewatch this one as opposed to Devil Made Me Do It. But and again, the acting and the cinematography is still very good.
And Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are still great in the film. And I will say that I do think, from a directing standpoint, I do think Michael Chaves did a better job directing this movie than The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yeah, but my biggest issue, I have like three big issues with this movie. Number one, I wasn't a huge fan of how they kind of shoehorned Annabelle into this. Just feels like she's included for the sake of including her. I don't really think she adds that much to the plot. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they upped the goriness of this one because that's one of the things I really loved about the first two Conjurings. They were rated R because they were scary, not because they were gross.
Yeah, and in all honesty, and I don't know how alone I am in this, but I really just didn't find this movie that scary, to be honest. I didn't think the jump scares were that good. I also didn't find the villain of the film, the Mirror Demon, to be that scary or strong of a villain. And the way that they defeat the demon at the end, through the power of family or love, if you want to call it that, I don't know, it just felt kind of forced. And also, didn't we already see something like that?
Yeah, and that's a really nice way to dovetail into my biggest issue with this movie, which is I really didn't like all of the family melodrama in this movie, with both the family that's being haunted and the Warrens. It really killed the pace of this movie, number one, and it killed the atmosphere.
Well, and also think about this, Andrew. If you look at this movie and then you look at some of the other films in the franchise, I don't know if it's just me, but I think it took way too long for Ed and Lorraine to get involved with the investigation.
Yeah, it really does.
Because also, I just didn't really care for the Smurl family overall. And I say that as someone who really liked the Perrin family from the first movie and the Hodgsons in the second Conjuring. But the Smurl family in this movie, they weren't, I mean, terrible characters, but no one really stood out to me in particular.
Yeah, best way I can put it is that this was the once truly great horror franchise, and you can give or take the spin-offs. I'm talking the Key series, the first two movies. And the fact that it's going to be going out on a whimper instead of a bang is what truly cemented this as my most disappointing movie of the year. Now, again, there are some good moments in this. I love the line of when the Warrens discover the mirror, it's like, it found us again. But man, I just really wish this movie was better than it was.
And you know what? One thing I did like about this movie, I did like the little callbacks to the original film. You know, like when we see Ed making pancakes, just like he did for the Perrins when they were at the house. When he mentions, you know, when he's showing all the artifacts, he says, hey, sometimes it's better to keep the genie in the bottle, you know, when he's showing Tony everything. And even the fact that they brought the Perrin family and the Hodgsons back at the end of the movie for the wedding. I mean, I did like those little callbacks. It's just, I wish we had more spirit from the original film and the second one that we didn't really get in this one and the third movie.
Yeah, the reason this one is so disappointing to me is because I just really wanted this series to go out on a better note.
Me too. Is it an acceptable ending for the franchise? Sure. But again, like you said, I wish it went out on more of a bang.
Yeah. Well, now that we've gotten ourselves in the right headspace for negativity, we move on to our last category, which is our Cats 2019 award, which is our worst movie of the year. And boy, howdy, there was a lot of contenders for this one for both of us. But Cade, let's start with yours.
Okay, so my pick for worst movie of the year is going to go to The Strangers Chapter 2. And I know anybody watching is probably thinking, but Cade, you absolute moron, weren't there more bad movies worse than this? Yes, but you know, this one's a little bit more personal for me because when I look back at the original The Strangers from 2008, I mean, I've always enjoyed that film. I consider it a pretty good horror film overall, and I especially just really love the strangers as killers. You know, the fact that they're just these three masked killers that we know absolutely nothing about. And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was one of your favorite things about The Strangers.
Yes, because that was, my opinion, what made them scary is the fact that you knew nothing about them. They could be your next door neighbor. They could be your kid's teacher. They could be the nice couple that lives down the street.
Yeah, and The Strangers Chapter 1 from 2024 is pretty much just a reboot slash retelling of the original film, and I didn't enjoy it at all because to me it just came off as a cheaper, less effective remake of the original. And despite my many issues with that movie, I still was willing to give this movie a chance because I knew that it was part of a planned trilogy that was shot back to back. So I thought, okay, maybe the first movie was just them recreating the original. Maybe the second one and the third one are really going to dive into what they want to do and get into the real substance that they have planned for these movies. And sadly, this movie to me might actually be worse than Chapter 1. And one frequent comment that I've heard about this movie is the fact that it's essentially a 90-minute chase sequence. And having seen the movie, yeah, I don't disagree with that because part of why it feels so pointless of a movie and why it feels like a 90-minute chase sequence is because that's pretty much what it is. I mean, it's mainly Maya, the lead character, after she survives the encounter in the first one. She's then ends up at the hospital. The strangers show up. They chase her throughout the hospital. They chase her throughout the woods for a good majority of the film. She ends up back at the house from the first movie. They find her. She ends up in a car, jumps out of that. They chase her through the woods again. They chase her through the woods again. She ends up at a new house towards the end of the movie. The strangers show up. They chase her away from that too. It's just rinse and repeat throughout the whole film. It got really repetitive really fast. It's just Maya running away. And I get that that happens a lot in slasher films, but the entire movie, it just gets really tedious at that point. And here's what I find funny. So while one of my issues with the original The Strangers from 2008 is that the characters do make dumb decisions. Well, the characters in these Strangers movies are on a new level. It's just dumb decision after dumb decision after dumb decision. And I'm willing to forgive that if it happens a couple of times because you could excuse it as, okay, you know what, maybe characters just do illogical things in tense situations. But the entire movie, that is where it just gets really annoying and really unbelievable. And guess what, Andrew? This will make you happy. Not only are the characters in this movie stupid, but guess what? The strangers aren't even good at their jobs either because there's a scene where one of the strangers shows up behind Maya when she's trying to defend herself and she's hiding in a room, and the stranger literally starts singing right behind her, "Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop," and instead of, you know, attacking Maya or anything like that, and then Maya jumps around and attacks her instead. I'm not lying. That's an actual scene in the movie.
Ugh.
And you know what? There's even a scene in this movie where it basically turns into the Revenant because it turns out there's a fourth stranger, and that fourth stranger is a giant boar that the strangers release and send after Maya. It attacks her. She has to fight it off. She pretends to be dead so that the boar runs away. It comes back. She has to fight it off. She hides in a car. The boar attacks her. And it's literally just an entire sequence where she's fighting off a CGI boar.
Wow. I didn't even know that part.
But my least favorite thing about this movie, the biggest sin that this movie commits, it completely undoes the entire concept of the strangers. And what do I mean by that? Well, like I mentioned in the original film from 2008, one of my favorite things is we don't know shit about the killers. We know absolutely nothing. We don't know their real names. We don't know their backstories. We don't know what they do outside of hunting their victims. The closest thing that we get in the original is when they ask the strangers, why are you doing this? They just say, because you were home. And to me, that's just a very effective motivation because, hey, they don't have a very personal motivation against these characters. They're just doing it because they want to.
Yeah, it ups the scariness because it's literally just we want to.
But this movie takes the completely opposite direction with the characters. In this movie, we get identity reveals and we also get flashbacks showing their backstories. And spoiler alert, turns out two of the strangers have actually known each other since they were kids. These two strangers being Pinup Girl and the Masked Man. So when they were kids, turns out Pinup Girl, her real name is Shelly. She was jealous of this other girl that followed the boy around, so she eventually snaps and she kills that girl, who we find out is actually named Tamara, which turns out to be the reason why the strangers always ask if Tamara is home when they terrorize their victims.
Wow, that feels very important. Definitely needed to be explained.
So yeah, as you can tell, I really hated that approach that they took as a fan of the original film. Again, not knowing everything about these killers made them scary. And knowing all that, it's making them less terrifying and less interesting as villains. Andrew, I don't know about you, but watching the original film, I never wanted to know anything about the strangers.
No, me either. Again, there is a natural creepiness and a natural scariness that comes with the unknown.
Yeah, and getting the answers, I'm always going to hold that against this movie because of that.
Yeah, if anything, I think this movie goes to show that maybe Rennie Harlan should stop doing horror movies.
But now that we're finished listening to me rant like a dumbass, Andrew, it's time for your least favorite movie of the year. And originally, I was going to pick this for my least favorite movie, but Andrew said, no, pick another one. I'm doing this one. I said, all right. So, Andrew, go ahead.
Okay. Admittedly, I didn't see too many truly terrible movies this year, which is a good thing. But there was one that came out this summer that when I heard the reviews, I had to see for myself. I had to see if it truly was as bad as everybody was saying it was, if it was as meme-worthy as everybody is saying it was. And holy crap, everybody was correct. Every review I read was spot on because War of the Worlds 2025 is genuinely one of the worst movies I have ever seen.
I completely agree with you, man.
Because the fact that this movie can be summed up with the statement, Ice Cube saves the world from an alien invasion thanks to Amazon Prime, is a 100% accurate description of this movie, says enough about how terrible it is. Holy shit, this movie is bad. Start off with the biggest problem, Ice Cube. Okay, I've seen Ice Cube do dramatic roles. Boys in the Hood comes to mind. But he primarily does comedy, and I think he's very good at comedy. I love the Friday movies. I love the Jump Street movies. I even somewhat liked the first Ride Along. But this is not a comedy. This is supposed to be a sci-fi thriller. I wouldn't say it's a horror movie, but a sci-fi thriller.
Or you know what, Andrew? Maybe one other way of looking at it, it's kind of like The Happening, an unintentional comedy.
Yes, as an unintentional comedy, it's phenomenal. But Ice Cube spends the entirety of this movie making overly exaggerated shock faces into his webcam and saying a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo that doesn't really make a damn lick of sense. And then being a dick to his kids and a dick to his son-in-law. And then we're supposed to feel bad for him because he goes on gives this very cliched email at the end of the movie. He's like, oh, to my kids, parenting is being so hard. But remember, I still love you. Wow, like we haven't seen that cliche half a million times. Let's see. On top of that, the CGI is absolutely atrocious. The aliens in this movie genuinely look like they're from the PS1 era. And for a movie that had the backing of a company like Amazon, you couldn't have given some better special effects.
And also, speaking of Amazon,
Ugh, the climax of this movie. His son-in-law using an Amazon delivery drone to try to bring, I think it's a virus, to try to kill the alien invasion because they're after our data. What data are they after? Oh, we're not going to explain that. Just they're after the data. The Prime drone crashes and they have to convince a homeless man to turn it right side up. And how do they convince this random homeless guy to help them? Oh, let's offer him an Amazon gift card. He'll definitely take that. This movie is an ad, is what it is. I would say it's borderline propaganda for Amazon. Oh, so let's talk about the fact that it is boring as hell. Okay, now these sort of like computer screen based movies, there's not a ton of them, and I haven't seen them all. I think probably the most famous of them would probably be like the Unfriended franchise, but none of them work because it has such a flat feel because it's just people talking into their face cam, just talking, 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 talking. Oh, let me type into my computer, talking, talking, talking. Let me talk into my computer. Oh, let me open up this program, talking, more talking, talking. It's so effing boring. Ugh, this movie is so damn bad. And the cheek, the barefaced cheek of this director to claim that we wanted to give this a theatrical release as opposed to shitting it out on Amazon Prime Video. Bad casting, bad acting, bad writing, bad special effects, bad pacing, bad characters. If this doesn't win Worst Picture at the Razzies, I will be genuinely pissed off. When your entire movie hinges on a performance like this one does, and that performance is as atrocious as Ice Cube is in this, it makes for a bad viewing experience, and I hate it. And with that, that concludes our 2025 awards ceremony. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, I've been Andrew, joined by Cade. Please make sure to like and subscribe and also follow us on our various socials, which you can find in the description of our channel. And we will see you all very soon.